Hi guys, FrostFangs here, back with another video. Hope you're all doing well. A bit of a different one today. We're in Marvel Rivals, as I'm sure you can see with its very pretty UI, but I'm going to be giving you one tip for each hero. It's a little bit of a different video than that, but you'll get what I mean after I go through a few. I made a ton of notes I've been playing over the past couple of days after finally getting a key through the mess of like the beta Twitch drops stuff. This isn't a sponsored video or anything like that. I just wanted to actually make one, giving you some of my thoughts on some of the characters and some sort of advice, because I've seen a ton of people play a lot of the characters kind of wrong or not fully taking advantage of their kit. Let's jump into target practice, show them off, give you my thoughts, go through the list of stuff, and you'll get what I'm trying to do here. Play a ton of games, obviously like this, but specifically I've played a ton of the characters, just actually all of them, as much as possible, even the ones I wouldn't consider particularly strong, and made notes. Going to go from top left down through the classes, like from Bruce Banner to Thor. But for Hulk here, the tip is really simple. It's just hold space and actually use your jump. You can take people out of the air with it, which I never see anybody do. I've seen it maybe happen once or twice actually in a match. You can really use it quite aggressively to get in and move around, and he's sort of a dive character. Also plays kind of like Diva, because obviously when you detransform you go back to being Bruce Banner, but he isn't actually that squishy, assuming you're not in like a terrible spot. So that's one of the tips as well, but the main one really is just use the space, jump around, tackle people. Quite straightforward of a character, to be honest with you. I'm surprised he's rated 4 stars, but yeah, the jump really is a big part of it. Also, as a second one, don't banish or either person that you're actually trying to clear. You want to do it on somebody else that's hitting you that you can't actually reach, because you can't deal damage to them when they're banished. So I've seen people do this all the time where they jump in with Hulk, even if they are actually using the jump, which is quite rare, and then they E them and they're just kind of like punching, doing nothing. Gonna try and speed up a little bit, or else I'm gonna be here all day. Venom's is really straightforward. He's really strong at the moment. The first one is just actually use the E correctly, and yeah, use his movement. He is very mobile for a character who is as tanky and sort of beefy and plays the way Venom does. The F is also something I don't see people use enough, where you can like sort of shift and then slam down. It's really good again for trying to dive and stuff. You pop the right click to sort of, you know, chain people and slow them down a little bit, but the closer to 0 you use your E, the better. That really is the main one aside from the movement. As you see here, you generate like over 1,000 extra health, and it doesn't degen that fast and can really save a lot of fights, but I see people use it all the time at like 400 or 500 and get still a decent amount, but it's way better the lower you are. Again, it's right there in this kit, but people just seem to miss it. You want to be around 250 and under, I think, is kind of the ideal range. 300 isn't that bad, you still gen quite a bit, but when you're genning over 1,000, it is really hard to clear you and buys you a decent amount of time. So yeah, don't take that as like a super hard number or anything. Again, the UI in this game is so pretty. Next up, we've got Magneto, who's overall, I'd say, one of the most underrated characters at the moment. He is really good. A bit slow. Generally, that's kind of the only thing I could say negatively about him, but he's underplayed for how good he is, in my opinion. Because yeah, even though he's slower, I think that can kind of be a good thing, because he does hit very hard. You don't gen your, you know, right click insanely fast, even with the shield, to be honest. But yeah, just overall, I like Magneto. Underrated. Not really too much I can give you in the way of tips, other than take advantage of his ultimate, which absorbs stuff around a massive radius, by the way. It looks kind of small here, but it does absorb a ton, and also hits really hard, and it just sort of stops fights for a little minute. Really good. Overall, go play Magneto. My tip for him is go play him. He's better than you might think. He's a little bit slower, which is the only downside. Next up, Peni Parker. Going to go through this one pretty quick. She is a terror character, but she has more movement than people seem to realize. You can't headshot, as far as I remember, with the weapon, or at least you can't hear on the bots. I don't remember doing it in my games, so that's kind of a tip, but the main one really is to just use her movement, because you can get quite far away from her little net stuff and then be brought back and sort of saved. And overall, her shift as well is really good for pushing. I do not see enough people use this kind of behind a wall and use it to push the cart, which I would say is a really good scenario for her. Even though I'd say she's a little bit better, maybe defensively, she's really good offensively too, especially if you play her correctly and sort of set up in the right spots. But she is really a turret character with just a bit of spice, and that spice is really quite strong. Her ultimate as well, I see often used kind of wrong. You do pretty much want to spam both of the mouse buttons like the entire time. It's not really a reason I could think of as to why you wouldn't. Yeah, her ultimate is pretty good. I see not enough people use it correctly, so that's kind of like 3 in 1. But that's, I think, it. I don't know what else I can really say. She's good for pushing, good for defense, but people just seem to play her a little bit strange. For Doctor Strange, though, this video is going to take me forever. My one tip would be to use the teleporter early game, which is kind of massive, even though it is two-sided, and then just switch off him, because the cooldown is a massive, I think one of the longest cooldowns in the game, and there's nothing stopping you from using that, changing champion, and keeping it going. The sort of second tip would be to use his shield, which is really strong. It gens super fast, but there is a tiny bit of time, so you can't just spam it, but yeah, really quite good for pushing. It's a lot bigger than I think people sort of take advantage of, because you can easily block your team sort of like this, even if you're getting hit from the top. Third thing would be, though, because for some reason this is one tip that turns into 3 for every character, is to be careful with your E, your detonate, because when it gets to full, you get anti-heal on you, and that is kind of brutal. It's not for super long, especially if you just fully gen it and then pop it, but you need to pay attention to it, because if you don't, you're not going to get any heals whatsoever, which are super important in this game, probably more so than most other hero shooters maybe. Next up, simple one, Groot. My main one would just be to take advantage of synergies, especially with Rocket Raccoon and yeah, Jeff. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it already in game if you played, but kind of a general tip is if you're playing with somebody else, try and, you know, take advantage of the synergy, because it is kind of massive, especially for certain characters. I'm not going to point that out about every single one, but specifically Rocket Raccoons and yeah, the Punisher, kind of crazy. A few of the other ones here are massive, because they give you basically an entire extra ability, and Groot's is kind of a little bit more unique. The other tip aside from that is just take advantage of the walls to sort of block people in if you can. The E seems to be cleared by friendlies as well, which is a little bit strange, but you can, yeah, retrieve all of them. I don't know if that actually helps with the cooldowns that much, but it seems to, and in my experience, people don't use the walls aggressively enough. They use it defensively and not to sort of block enemies in and separate the teams and stuff. Simple. The other one would also be that you can keep multiple walls out, so you might as well set up a little bit because you can have 3 and they don't seem to despawn, but the third one, again, because I'm doing 3 in 1 for some reason, so you can place them in ways that you might not think that you could until you see it. Finally, to finish off the tanks / vanguards, we have Thor. This one's really straightforward. It's 1, use the F when you're actually dueling somebody because the damage on it is kind of insane. It's like 6 seconds you're in it, and yeah, you can take out a hell of a lot of people with that ability. You do have to use all your charges, but use the F more because I don't see enough people do it. And the other one would be charge up the shift, because I also don't see people do this, and you can push people with it. So you get a lot more movement. I didn't seem to push him there for some reason, but yeah, I see people just like tap it like that and get no movement because they don't realize that you can hold it down to charge it. You can also kind of use it to bait people, because if you just hold it the entire time, even though it's not super useful, it doesn't actually consume it, and you just, you know, charge it up and don't do anything with it. But you can push people. Yeah, there you go. That was an example for it. Starting off with Storm, though, a bit of a tough character for me to give you too many tips on because she is pretty straightforward. She is a buffer, but I would say if you're going to pick her early game, I find she's a little bit better. If you're starting off around and you're getting your whole team out of the spawn with the speed buff, it's kind of huge. The speed buff on it is really, really strong, and you don't want to be too high up either because it does, as you can sort of see, drop off. So you don't want to be like this high up because you're not buffing anybody. The ultimate, I don't really know what I could give you a tip on, to be honest. It's pretty strong, and yeah, it's really quite annoying, but as a character, she's a little bit different, a little bit more unique, and yeah, plays more, I think, around team play than most other options. Black Panther, definitely more difficult for me to give you a tip on. I would just say focus on the combo, because you do get that shift reset, obviously, when you get on him. So if you can, he's a little bit more difficult to play, but you get that reset, you can just get an insane amount of movement, and your E doesn't go vertically. I see people try and use it a little bit differently, but it does only go horizontal. Can't really say too much about Black Panther, though. I haven't found him to be particularly strong for the way that I play this game, but yeah, the main one really is just that dash if you get it going, especially if you combo in your normal melee, which you can do, and seems to have a bit of an easier, like, sort of hit range for it, because sometimes it can be kind of easy to miss as people moving like crazy. But not much I can really say, though, about Black Panther or Storm, to be honest. So a bit more difficult for me to give you tips on. Iron Man, on the other hand, I do have yeah, pretty straightforward one I could say. It's just use the E. The AoE damage on this is kind of crazy. You can be really, really far away. Don't really necessarily need to get into the middle of the fight a lot of the time. You can be kind of far back. And versus certain team comps, he's crazy. I'd say he's a little bit more situational depending on the map and the teams, but my main tip would just be take advantage of the fact that Iron Man is able to do very Iron Man stuff. The main tip I would actually give you, though, if you wanted one thing, is that use the ultimate kind of sneaky because it has really, really quiet sound effects. Overall, Iron Man isn't super noticeable as a character unless you're taking damage from him. He's sort of quiet around the map, but the ultimate, if you pop it, you fire it, the setup is kind of loud, but when it's actually traveling, until it hits the ground, you don't really hear it that much. So if you're using it at kind of weird angles and stuff, you will catch people off guard and can easily clear teams with it because it does hit kind of crazy. You're also surprisingly hard to hit if you're in the shift, kind of like moving around like crazy, but yeah, Iron Man really quite strong at the moment, even though versus certain matchups can be kind of tough. Certain characters that we'll get to in a minute, I'm sure you'll see, really do kind of body him sometimes. Next up, Spider-Man, the only 5-star difficult character we've got at the moment. His kit isn't that complicated, it's just actually executing on it that can be kind of tough, but just like Black Panther, don't really have too much I could tell you other than focus on the combos, and specifically with Spider-Man, you can deal really, really well with the more aerial characters. So my tip would be focus the flying characters, focus the squishies, you can burst them surprisingly well. I can't really execute on it too well myself, but I've seen people do it, and I've played against it enough that it's super goddamn annoying. His movement is also just kind of insane on some maps. I'm not going to really be able to show you it too well here, but yeah, you can move kind of crazy with Spider-Man, and you get the whole combo, and yeah, get the whole combo on him though, and it does go kind of crazy. I'm not going to be able to show you too well here, but yeah, if you're going against a good Spider-Man, you know what I mean. He's definitely quite different from the rest of the roster, which is why he's, I think, a 5-star, but yeah, if you match with him and it works for you, he can be really, really strong, and specifically what he's trying to do, I think he's quite goddamn good at. Star-Lord, a character who I'm much more familiar with and much better with. Yeah, people don't really seem to play him properly most of the time. You have the left click, which you can refill your ammo with on the right click. People don't really do that enough. You have essentially 3 mags, because you can empty one, right click, empty another one, right click, and empty another one. That's a lot of damage. But the one tip I have for you for him really would be to use the E, not like a Reaper ult where you're just kind of like on the floor. Only seen maybe 1 or 2 people take advantage of the fact that you can shift and E at the same time to get more movement, and you're really, really difficult to hit because of the graphic. Obviously, I think people over time will maybe get a little bit better at hitting you when you're doing that. But at the moment, with the way the game is now, you're nearly untouchable when you're shifting and Eing at the same time. On the floor, a little bit easier, but with a shift, you're flying around doing this. That would be the one tip for sure. Jump on the point, shift, E, and then, yeah, one of my favorite characters at the moment for sure. He's not insanely strong, I don't think I would say, but yeah, good fun to play, especially with the Q. That's kind of just like an auto-aim ability. A lot of different characters from other hero shooters kind of all combined into one, and yeah, really do like him. Punisher, keeping it simple though, because he is a very straightforward character. I'd say generally my one tip would be playing a little bit more, you know, on defense and offense, because I think he's a little bit better, especially with the turret and stuff. But the main actual tip would be stop using the assault rifle up close, even though it does do fine. The shotty, if you've got time to switch to it and prepare a little bit, in close sort of indoor areas is crazy versus some characters. Yeah, even though it isn't massively different from this, it's just significantly more bursty and can catch people off guard. I don't see enough people switch to it. There's a little bit of switch time, but it hits hard. Use the shotgun, that's my tip. Then we have Hela, one of my favorites as well, alongside Star-Lord. I didn't really point out about the tanks, but yeah, her movement is pretty rigid, but you can hover. I don't see enough people use it to go up and then sort of fire down or duel with other sort of flying characters. It does hit really, really hard, especially with headshots. It has a bit of drop off, but yeah, just use the weapon and hit the head. Aim good and your damage with this is just crazy. That's my tip. I really, really like Hela, but yeah, the other one would be to use the shift and then kind of fly around like this and fire down, because a lot of people can't necessarily deal with this, assuming you're landing your shots. There's also like a little explosion whenever you clear people. Final sort of point would be to use the ult a little bit more aggressively, because your health is separate and you can fire as many shots as you want. You just have a timer or until you get cleared. The problem is if your entire team is out, you get cleared, you just go back to the ground and you're kind of like, you know, free kill. But yeah, my point would be use it aggressively, because it is really quite strong when used like that instead of the way I see people use it most of the time. Then we have Magik, another tough one for me, just like the other melee options. For some reason in this game, give me a bit of a hard time. My main tip would be, just like the other ones, fight indoors if you can, and specifically combo with the E. Get in with the shift, don't know what happened there, and then use the E to knock people up. And some characters just get kind of bodied by that, and obviously you gen health from dealing damage, so trying to duel is really the way that she works. And team fights, if you're in the middle, you're just going to get kind of bodied. She needs to play kind of like a flanker a little bit, but the shift combo with the E can give you a lot of options. The other sort of tip though would be in the ultimate, the E is even more ridiculous. You knock people up and also have like tick damage on all your stuff. I feel like she's more of an ultimate focused character than most of the other options, because in her ultimate she just feels significantly more crazy, and she's essentially doing a similar sort of thing. The ultimate just turns everything up to like 11, so I don't really know what I could give you advice-wise other than what I just said, because another melee character that for some reason I have a hard time, not necessarily recommending, but giving you a tip on. Then we have Scarlet Witch, another one who's kind of a favourite, and yeah, I'd say kind of underrated. She's definitely the more simple sort of character, but if you play her like a flanker, the tick damage does definitely add up, especially with that right click for the burst and stuff. I find her to be a lot better than people give her credit for, even though she does fall off for sure in the more sort of try-hard games. The E is super goddamn annoying if you throw it on the point. That tick stun can be a pain. Can definitely kill a lot of people if you play it kind of sneaky, especially because she can sort of fly, so a lot of the time you can get to areas that people aren't expecting you to be. You're surprisingly difficult to see in that shift when there's a lot of mess going on, so escaping isn't as difficult. Even though it looks like I'm super visible here, you're less visible from the other perspective. So the other tip sort of focused around the ultimate would be to use the shift to get kind of in sneaky and then pop the Q to get out of it, and by the time you're like half charged, people will realize you're there, and yeah, you just detonate and get 3 kills. Finishing off the duelist here, though, we've got Namor, a bit of a weird character. I feel like he's more of a 3-star than a 2-star, kind of underrated. People don't seem to play him that much and don't seem to do too well with him, but you can get headshots with the weapon, which is really kind of crazy. Base hits aren't that crazy, but if you get headshots all the time with it, I feel like it hits pretty damn hard, especially because you can throw the E on the walls. That's kind of the main tip. People don't do that enough, put them in sort of weird places. People just throw them in like the middle and they get cleared instantly. You can actually stick them. To summarize my tips, getting a headshot really isn't one, but throwing the E's in weird spots for sure is. Throwing them on like the ceiling or the sideboard, and then right clicking to direct them, because they do hit harder after that right click, which is a thing people do not do. You really should throw the E's down and then right click to get them to do that extra powerful hit, especially on certain characters. It can give you crazy amounts of burst. That's really all I can say. The ultimate, no tip I can really give you there, aside from, you know, all the time it can catch people off guard if you throw it back a little bit. But the shift, the only downside from it at the moment for me is this ability, which I just find to be kind of weird. You can definitely use it to get into weird spaces, but moving on to the strategists, we've got Loki, a character that I see people misplay all the time. You really do want to drop the decoys down and then play him kind of like a bot yourself. You don't want to be doing this, jumping around, which I found myself doing as well. The tip for him really would be to just play him kind of more normally and a little bit more chill, and not just jumping around kind of crazy, because it will give away which one you are. And in normal games, a lot of people won't realize that you're the real Loki, because there isn't too many things to give it away. I also, for some reason, thought you could get 3 decoys down with the right click, but you can't. But it does also drop 1. Very, very versatile character, though. Just not much I can really give you in the way of tips, but the shift comboed with like the sort of F teleport around, yeah, a lot of options, especially with the ultimate, which converts you to the character that you're trying to copy, whether it's a friendly or an enemy. I think I can do it here, right? Yeah, there we go. Now I'm Luna. Kind of a crazy character, the fact that you can just, you know, copy somebody's ultimate and get whichever one you want from the enemy team or your team. And yeah, really like him. One of my favorites again, for sure. Then we have Rocket Raccoon, just like with Groot, play the synergy if you can, and the other one would just be use the right click heal, which doesn't have to direct it. You can actually get it kind of close to them and it will still heal, as you can sort of see here. You don't actually have to hit them with the right click, which I see people trying to do all the time. It's just to go kind of close to them. I guess it doesn't make it too clear, but if you can, play the angles, play the bounces. Another really versatile character. I don't like him too much focused on the damage, but yeah, with the heals and stuff, you also get like a little respawn beacon. A lot of stuff you get, especially when comboed with, like I said, Groot or the Punisher, to get an extra ability. And yeah, play the angles, use the right click more. Didn't really give you one tip, but more of a general sort of thing. Then we have Adam Warlock, another favourite. A lot of my favourites seem to be in the strategist class now that I think about it. Very, very unique sort of bounce healer, especially with the shift. can really, really change fights. Your damage is pretty good, especially if you play angles and sort of charge up that right click. Aside from what I just said there, though, take advantage of the ultimate, which is just like a full team res a lot of the time if you use it correctly, and also the team up ability, which gives two other characters, Mantis and Star-Lord. Also, your Cocoon sort of passive, but really do like him though, sort of the res, heal, damage character. I play him a decent amount. Not really much I can say aside from that though. Then we have Jeff, one of the newer ones obviously when I'm recording this. Really sort of fun character. The tips are pretty simple. I would just say, for one, spam the bubbles. I do not see people, you know, throw these down. They stay on the floor for ages, and you might as well just, yeah, spam them if you can. I find to be a little bit better focused on heals and damage, but that might just be a me thing. His damage isn't bad, but for me, having him kind of in the back as a healer and then just moving around and stuff is his best sort of spot, but he is kind of easy to hit. If you're at the back here for free, his model is kind of easy to target for certain characters, and you want to try and play a little bit maybe more safe, a little bit more sneaky. The actual sort of one tip though would to be take advantage of the ultimate to throw people off the map, because you do just sort of absorb them and hold them, and you're pretty much immune while you're doing this. It's not specifically easy to just spit them out like that off the map, but you can also just self-dive off, and you will die for it, but if you've got 2 or 3 people, more than enough for a trade. Not too much I can really say about him again, because I haven't played him as much as some of the other characters, and he's not as much of a favourite as a lot of the other options here. But then we got Mantis. We're in the last 2 here. This video has been a little bit longer than my usual sort of stuff. I would recommend playing as sort of like a secondary healer more than a primary one, because she doesn't have like a burst heal. It does have a tiny bit of a tick at the start, but you are really, really consistently able to output them. Even though sometimes you do want to, you know, damage amp with the E or self-damage amp if you're dueling somebody, I think she's best off because the damage isn't that crazy, focused on just consistently healing the team. Again, especially as a secondary option, her heals do add up, especially over the course of a match, which is a little bit more of a simple character. You don't have to really think when you're playing, you're just kind of at the back of the team, throwing out shots, throwing out heals, and that also applies to her ultimate. She's a very, very consistent character, and this does overcharge people, so you do give them extra health. It is limited to a certain amount, but you're able to do stuff, unlike Luna Snow, who's doing the dance and everything. But you pop the Q, people often won't realize on the enemy team that you're in the ultimate, because the effect is kind of subtle. You're already zooming around anyway. I feel like I'm faster when I'm in the ult. Maybe that's actually the case. Have I not noticed that? Did I not write that down? I guess you're always just this fast. She's an insanely quick character. She's just got a crazy amount of mobility. You can actually outrun a lot of people who are going to try and chase you down, and you don't have a movement ability, which is, I suppose, the reason why, but you can also sleep with them with the shift. Another thing I don't see enough people use, especially if you shift here and you're going to like try and run away from stuff. That sleep is kind of massive. If you do hit them, they obviously wake up like pretty much every sleep in any game ever, but not much I can give you in the way of tips aside from what I just said though. But that sleep is super annoying when used correctly, and yeah, consistent heals. That's her thing. Finally here though, we have Luna Snow, one of my favorites. She might be my all-time favorite character actually, even though she's only rated 2-star difficulty. I feel like it's more like a 3. Really, really strong, especially when you're like marking somebody and healing. You're like healing 2 people, you're also able to damage. It does go through people. Your ideal position for her character, for sure, is just slightly behind your team, but throwing stuff through so that you also hit the enemy. For whatever reason, people don't play her sort of in that position. I feel like people play her a little bit to the side and not firing through, but yeah, you want to mark whoever you're not healing, because as far as I know, it doesn't actually give them extra heals or anything, but it does just give them like a general sort of buff, and you want to, you know, be healing 2 at once. Ideally even more, because if people lined up it works. And then last thing with that shift, extra healing, and the Q, which is kind of the star ability. I don't really use it in the other version that much. Most of the time you're going to be in the healer stance, and yeah, you're pretty much unkillable. You can move around a ton. You're pretty much making everybody else in the area unkillable. You can still get cleared a bit. You pretty much stop the fight. And again, a favorite of mine for sure. Find it to be really, really strong if you're doing damage and sort of healing at the same time. Pretty much the perfect example of a hybrid sort of character. The right click is also super goddamn annoying. Not as much as some of the other sort of CC stuff, but the right click freeze, especially if you hit somebody who's in the air, you do really sort of shut them down. Base weapon really is the star of the show, combined with the ultimate. One of my favorites. Not really much I can give you in the way of tips other than yeah, just spam the ultimate as much as you can. It's kind of insane, especially to counterplay stuff. Obviously you want to skate around if you can, which you do after like walking for a second. You also get a little bit of extra jump height, which I don't think you get if you're just normal. I'm hoping you got something out of this video. It's a little bit different for me for sure, but I gave you my thoughts, sort of some tips and some general stuff about all the different characters, all kind of bundled into one video, because I don't know if I'm going to make more Marvel Rivals or not. We'll see. I'll see if I end up playing it more long time after its release and everything, because this is obviously just from me playing in the beta. Obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, though, specifically for the characters I didn't really have too much to say about, like Black Panther, Spider-Man, or Magik. If you've got any tips, you know, for any of the ones I didn't already point out, or anything you want to say, of course, leave a like on the video. Let me know also what you want to see me do next. I'll see you guys all, yeah, very, very soon. It's been quite an enjoyable video to make it a little bit different for me, for sure, to keep things a little bit more fresh. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it staying all the way to the end, because it's probably a bit of a longer one. I'll see you guys all very, very soon. And as always, stay frosty.